My frozen fingers gripped the rusty iron bars as snow bit my face like tiny knives. It was December 23rd, 2019, 4:47 in the afternoon, and I was staring into the desperate eyes of two German shepherds who had wedged their heads between the bars of an abandoned shipyard warehouse. They were stuck. The temperature had dropped to 15 below zero. Blood dotted the snow beneath their necks where the metal had cut into their skin from struggling. One dog's eyes held a terrible resignation, as if she'd already accepted death. The other still fought, his whole body trembling with effort and fear. Their whimpering mixed with the winter wind, a sound that would haunt my dreams for months. I didn't know then that saving them would cost me everything I had left. I didn't know that miracles often look like tragedy first, that sometimes you have to lose yourself to find what matters. I only knew I couldn't walk away. Before we continue, please leave a like and let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. My name is Lily Harper, and I was 11 years old when everything changed. I lived with my Grandma Rose in Millbrook, West Virginia, a dying coal town where hope had packed its bags long before I arrived. Population 847 souls, though that number dropped every month as folks moved away searching for work. The mine had closed 4 years earlier, taking 67% of the town's jobs with it. What remained were boarded-up storefronts, empty houses with for sale signs nobody bothered to steal, and people who stayed because they had nowhere else to go. Grandma Rose and I lived in Pinewood Mobile Estates, which was a fancy name for a trailer park at the edge of town. Our home was a 32-foot single-wide with a leaky roof and windows that rattled when the wind blew. Rose survived on $847 a month from Social Security, plus whatever she could make selling quilts at the church bazaar. Her heart medication alone cost $180 monthly. I'd moved in with her 18 months earlier when my parents divorced. My father, Jack Harper, had relocated to Charleston with his new girlfriend Melissa, starting fresh in insurance sales. He called every few weeks, promised visits that never happened, sent birthday cards with $20 bills inside like that made up for his absence. My mother Carol had left for California 9 months ago. No phone calls, no letters, nothing. Grandma Rose was all I had. And some days I worried that wasn't enough. She was 68 with arthritis in her hands and a heart that skipped beats when she got stressed. She moved slowly, spoke softly, and watched me with eyes that held secrets I didn't understand yet. What I didn't know then was that Rose carried her own burden of abandonment. 25 years earlier, she'd been addicted to painkillers and had left her 6-year-old daughter, my mother, at a bus station with nothing but a note. 3 years passed before she got clean and came back. Some wounds never fully heal. They just scar over, waiting for something to tear them open again. That December, as Christmas approached and temperatures dropped, I walked home from Millbrook Elementary alone every afternoon. I took the long route past the abandoned shipyard to avoid the kids who whispered about my secondhand clothes and the free lunch tickets I used in the cafeteria. I preferred the company of rusted metal and silence to the cruelty of children who had fathers waiting at home. December 23rd started like any other day that winter. School let out early for Christmas break at 3:30, and while other kids rushed to waiting parents in warm cars, I pulled my thin coat tighter and began the walk home. The temperature was dropping fast. Gray clouds hung low and heavy, pregnant with snow that hadn't started falling yet but would soon. I could taste it in the air, that metallic cold that meant a storm was coming. I slipped through the gap in the chain-link fence surrounding the old shipyard like I did every afternoon. The yard had been abandoned since World War II, when they'd built small vessels here for the Navy. Now it was just acres of rusted metal, collapsed buildings, and memories of better times. The shortcut saved me 15 minutes and spared me from walking past Danny Morrison's house. Danny was in my grade and enjoyed reminding everyone that my dad didn't want me anymore. I was halfway through the yard when I heard a sound so faint I almost missed it beneath the wind rattling through metal scaffolding. A whimper, weak and desperate. I stopped walking, held my breath, listened. There it was again. Not the wind. Something alive and suffering. My feet moved before my brain caught up, following the sound toward the collapsed section of the old warehouse. The building had partially caved in years ago, leaving a maze of twisted beams and broken concrete. That's when I saw them. Two German shepherds, their heads wedged between iron bars that had once been part of a loading gate. The gap between the bars looked about 8 inches wide, big enough for a desperate, starving dog to think they could squeeze through. Too small for their skulls to pass back out once they'd pushed forward. They were stuck. Completely, terribly stuck. The larger dog, mostly black with brown markings, was still struggling. His whole body shook with effort as he tried to pull backward. But the bars held his head like a vice. Blood matted the fur around his neck where the metal had cut into skin. The smaller dog, lighter colored with softer features, had stopped fighting. Her eyes were open but distant, as if she'd already left her body and was just waiting for it to realize she was gone. Blood dripped steadily from wounds on her neck, staining the snow beneath her a delicate pink. I recognized them immediately. Everyone in Millbrook knew Dale Brennan's dogs. They lived chained outside his house at the end of Maple Street, barking at passers-by, ribs showing through their coats. People talked about calling animal control, but nobody ever did. Dale was a veteran. People made excuses. "Hey," I whispered, dropping to my knees in the snow. "Hey, it's okay. I'm here." The black dog Shadow, I'd heard Dale call him, turned his eyes toward me and growled. A weak, broken sound that was more plea than threat. I reached toward him slowly. He snapped, teeth clicking inches from my fingers. "Okay," I breathed. "Okay, I understand. You're scared." The lighter dog, Hope, that was her name, didn't react at all when I touched her. Her fur was ice cold. Her breathing so shallow I had to watch carefully to see her ribs move. I unwound my scarf from my neck, the only warm thing I owned that wasn't falling apart, and wrapped it gently around Hope's neck. The bleeding slowed slightly. "Hold on," I told her. "Please, hold on." I tried pulling the bars apart with my hands. They didn't budge even a fraction of an inch. Tried pushing them in different directions. Nothing. These bars had been here for 70 years. They weren't moving for an 11-year-old girl. The dogs were going to die here, and I couldn't stop it alone. I ran. My lungs burned as I sprinted through the shipyard, squeezed through the fence, and raced down the street toward our trailer. Snow had started falling, thick and fast, the storm finally beginning. My mind spun with fear. Would Grandma Rose help? We had no money. These weren't our dogs. Dale might get angry, but they were dying. They were dying right now, and I couldn't just leave them. I burst through the trailer door, gasping. Grandma Rose looked up from her quilting, startled. "Lily, what on earth?" "Dogs," I panted. "2 dogs stuck in the shipyard. They're hurt bad. They're gonna die." Rose's face hardened. "Those are Dale Brennan's animals. He'll take care of his own." "He won't." The words exploded out of me. "He doesn't care. They're starving and bleeding and nobody helps them, and they're going to freeze to death right now if we don't do something." Tears poured down my face. I hadn't cried in months, not since Mom left. But I couldn't stop now. "Please, Grandma, please. I can't watch them die. I can't watch anything else leave me." Something shifted in Rose's expression. Her eyes went distant for a moment, remembering something painful. When she looked at me again, I saw recognition there, understanding. She stood slowly, joints creaking. "Get my toolbox from under the sink. I'll call Frank Morrison." 5 minutes later, we were in Frank's pickup truck, Rose, Frank, and me driving back to the shipyard with a hacksaw, wire cutters, old blankets, and a truck jack. The snow was falling harder now, visibility dropping. Frank's windshield wipers struggled to keep up. "Those bars are going to be tough," Frank warned. He was 72, a retired mechanic with hands like leather and a heart bigger than his vocabulary. "Might not be able to cut through." "We have to try," I said. Nobody argued. We parked as close as we could get and trudged through deepening snow to where the dogs waited. In the 15 minutes I'd been gone, Hope had deteriorated. Her eyes were closed now. Shadow had stopped struggling and was making a keening sound I'd never heard an animal make before. Grief and terror mixed together. Frank sized up the situation, ran his hand along the bars. "These are solid iron, 3/4 inch thick. He tried the hacksaw anyway. The blade barely scratched the surface. Shadow lunged at him as he got close, snapping wildly despite his trapped position. Frank jerked back. Can't work with him fighting like that. I crawled forward on my stomach through the snow until I was inches from Shadow's face. His eyes were wild, showing white all around. I know, I whispered. I know you don't trust anyone. I know people hurt you, but I'm trying to help. Please, please let us help. Shadow's growling quieted slightly. His eyes met mine. I slowly, so slowly, extended my hand and placed it on Hope's side. Her ribs felt like piano keys under her skin. I could count every one. She needs you to be brave, I told Shadow. She needs you to let us save her. Shadow stopped growling. Frank moved back to the bars, examining them more carefully. Wait. Look here. He pointed to where the bars met the concrete foundation. Decades of rust had eaten away at the base. This one's weak, if I can get the jack positioned right. It took 20 minutes of careful maneuvering in the falling snow. 20 minutes, while Hope's breathing got shallower and Shadow watched with eyes that held a terrible, desperate hope. Finally, Frank had the jack wedged properly. He began pumping the handle. Metal groaned. The bar moved half an inch, 2 inches. Now! Frank shouted. Rose and I grabbed Hope's body and pulled gently. Her head slipped free, and she collapsed in the snow, not moving. Hope, I pressed my ear to her chest, still beating, barely. She's alive. She's still alive. Shadow fought harder now, seeing Hope free, trying to follow. Frank repositioned the jack, pumped again. Another bar shifted. Shadow's head came free, and he immediately scrambled backward, three-legged because his front left leg wasn't working right, dragging himself to Hope. He stood over her, teeth bared at all of us, protecting her even though he could barely stand. Easy, boy, Frank said. We're not the enemy. Rose wrapped Hope in blankets while I talked softly to Shadow. We need to take her to a vet. We need to take you both. Please, please trust us just a little bit more. Shadow didn't relax, but he didn't attack when Frank lifted Hope, blankets and all, and carried her to the truck. He followed, limping badly, and wouldn't let us touch him but jumped into the truck bed himself to lie beside Hope. We wrapped them both in every blanket we had. The snow was coming down so heavy now we could barely see. Nearest vet is Dr. Bennett in Harrison, Frank said. 25 miles. These roads are getting bad. How much will it cost? Rose asked quietly. Frank glanced at the dogs, at their condition. 500, maybe 8, maybe more if it's real bad. I saw my grandmother's face go pale. We didn't have $500. We barely had 50. Grandma, I started. We'll figure it out, Rose said, her voice hard with determination. We'll figure it out. Now drive. Frank, drive fast. The truck pulled out of the shipyard, taillights disappearing into the storm. Behind us, in the snow, 2 dark stains marked where Shadow and Hope had nearly died. But they hadn't died. Not yet. Not if I had anything to say about it. The drive to Harrison took nearly an hour. What should have been 25 minutes stretched into an eternity as Frank's truck crawled through the blizzard at 15 miles per hour. I sat in the back seat, twisted around to watch Shadow and Hope through the rear window. Shadow never stopped watching Hope. His body curved protectively around hers despite his own injuries. Dr. Sarah Bennett's veterinary clinic sat on the outskirts of Harrison, a modern building that looked expensive even from the outside. Warm light glowed through large windows. A digital sign out front advertised boarding services and grooming packages. This was a place for people who could afford to pamper their pets. We weren't those people. Frank pulled up to the entrance and laid on the horn. Within seconds, Dr. Bennett emerged, a woman in her mid-30s with auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and sharp, intelligent eyes that took in the situation immediately. Bring them in through the back, she called, already moving. Emergency entrance. Frank carried Hope while Shadow limped behind. growling at anyone who got too close. The emergency room was all stainless steel and bright lights. Other clients in the waiting area stared as we tracked snow and blood across the clean floors. I must have looked like something from a nightmare, my coat soaked through, my hair frozen in clumps, my hands still shaking from cold and adrenaline. "Put her here," Dr. Bennett directed, indicating an examination table. She moved with practiced efficiency, her hands gentle but quick as she began checking Hope's vital signs. A young assistant appeared to help with Shadow, but he backed into a corner and wouldn't let anyone approach. "He's terrified," Dr. Bennett observed. "We'll need to sedate him to examine properly." She looked at me. "Can you hold your dog while we give him a shot?" "He's not," I started, then stopped. "Yes, I can try." I approached Shadow slowly, talking in the same soft voice I'd used in the shipyard. I know this is scary, but these people want to help. I promise." Shadow's eyes locked on mine. For a moment, I thought he might bolt or attack. Then, miraculously, he limped forward and pressed against my legs. He was trembling so hard I could feel it through my jeans. Dr. Bennett moved carefully, sliding the needle in while I held Shadow's head. He flinched but didn't snap. Within minutes, the sedative took effect and he slumped onto the examination table. Rose, Frank, and I sat in the waiting room while Dr. Bennett and her assistant worked. 45 minutes crawled by. Other clients came and went, a woman with a cat in a designer carrier, a man with a poodle wearing a sweater that probably cost more than my coat. They stared at us, at our shabby clothes and worn boots, at the melting snow puddles around our feet. I felt their judgment like a physical weight. Finally, Dr. Bennett emerged, pulling off latex gloves. Her expression was grim. "Hope is severely malnourished," she began without preamble. "She's approximately 15 pounds underweight. The wounds on her neck are infected. She's hypothermic and showing signs of pneumonia. Shadow has similar malnutrition, but he also has old fractures that never healed properly, 3 ribs and his left front leg. Both dogs have infected wounds, whip marks across their backs, and what appear to be burn scars. Someone filed down Shadow's teeth, probably to make him less dangerous." Her voice was clinical, but I could see the anger in her eyes. "This is long-term, systematic abuse," she continued. "These animals have suffered for months, maybe years. Who could do this to living creatures?" "Dale Brennan," Frank said quietly. "Everyone in Millbrook knows, but nobody does nothing about it." Dr. Bennett's jaw tightened. "Well, someone needs to." She pulled out a tablet, started tapping. "Hope needs IV fluids, antibiotics, treatment for pneumonia, and at least 48 hours of observation. Shadow needs all of that plus surgery to re-break and properly set his leg. I'm estimating $2,847 for both dogs." The number hit like a punch to the stomach. Rose stood slowly, walked over to Dr. Bennett, and pulled her aside. I watched their whispered conversation, saw my grandmother's shoulders slump, saw the sympathetic but firm shake of Dr. Bennett's head. Rose came back to where I sat. Her face was drawn, older than I'd ever seen it. "Sweetheart," she said softly, kneeling in front of me. "We can't afford this. We have maybe $200. I'm so sorry, but maybe we should call animal control. They can—" "No!" The word exploded out of me. I was on my feet, screaming, tears pouring down my face. "No, you don't give up on family. You don't just throw them away because it's hard or expensive or inconvenient." The waiting room went silent. Everyone stared. "You gave up on Mom," I sobbed. "Don't make me give up on them." Rose's face crumpled. Her hand went to her mouth. In that moment, I saw her secret shame written across her features, and even through my tears, I regretted my words. Before anyone could speak, the clinic door burst open with such force it slammed against the wall. Dale Brennan stood in the doorway, swaying slightly, his army jacket hanging open despite the cold. The smell of whiskey preceded him into the room. His eyes were bloodshot, his face unshaven, his hands shaking. "Where are my goddamn dogs?" he roared. "Doctor—" Bennett stepped forward, placing herself between Dale and the rest of us. "Mr. Brennan, your dogs are in critical condition because of severe neglect. I'm treating them, and then we'll be discussing charges." "They're my property," Dale's voice cracked. "I'm a veteran. I served 3 tours in Afghanistan. I got rights. Can't nobody take my dogs." Frank Morrison stood, his weathered face hard. "Those dogs got whip marks and burn scars. Dale, they got rights too." Dale lurched forward, getting in Frank's face. "You calling me a liar? Old man? You saying I'm a bad person?" I stepped between them. At 11 years old and 4'9", I was tiny compared to these grown men, but I was too angry to be scared. "You hurt them," I said, my voice shaking but clear. "You starved them and beat them and left them to die. You don't love them. You don't get them back." Dale looked down at me, and something in his face broke. His eyes filled with tears. His hands started shaking worse. "I know," he whispered. "God help me. I know what I am." Then he was talking, words spilling out in a whiskey-soaked confession. 3 tours. Lost my whole squad in an ambush outside Kandahar. 17 men. I watched them die. Couldn't save a single one. His voice broke. "Got Shadow and Hope 4 years ago. Puppies from the shelter. They helped. They really helped. But the nightmares got worse. Started drinking. And they'd look at me with those eyes. And all I could see was my squad, asking why I lived when they died." He sank into a chair, head in his hands. "I'm a monster. I know I'm a monster. Every time I hit them, I hated myself more. But I couldn't stop. Couldn't stop seeing my men die. Couldn't stop hearing them scream." The waiting room had filled with people word traveled fast in small towns. Pastor Jim from First Baptist Church, Sal from the diner, Mrs. Henderson, my 6th grade teacher, Police Chief Tom Brady in uniform. People began arguing immediately. "Dale needs help, not judgment," Pastor Jim said firmly. "The man is sick." "Those dogs need protection," Mrs. Henderson countered. "Mental illness doesn't excuse cruelty. He's a veteran who served our country. And those are innocent animals who never hurt anyone." Voices rose, overlapping, heated. Chief Brady held up his hands. "Dale, you need to leave. We'll sort this out legally tomorrow." "I ain't leaving without my dogs," Dale said stubbornly. "The dogs can't be moved." Dr. Bennett interrupted. "They'll die if we try. Stand off." Everyone frozen in their positions. Pastor Jim cleared his throat. "What if we took up a collection, save the dogs first, worry about ownership later?" For a moment, nobody moved. Then Frank pulled out his wallet and placed a $20 bill on the reception desk. "For the dogs?" One by one, people came forward. A 5 here, a 10 there, 20s and 50s. The elderly widow, Mrs. Patterson, placed her wedding ring on top of the pile. "My Harold would have wanted this," she said softly. "He loved dogs more than people." I watched, stunned, as the pile grew. When Pastor Jim counted it, the total was $427, still 2,000, 420 short. Dr. Bennett's eyes were wet. "I'll start treatment," she said quietly. "We'll work out a payment plan." Dale stood unsteadily. He looked at the money, at the people who'd contributed, at me. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. "Don't deserve any mercy." Then he was gone, stumbling out into the snow. The door closed behind him, and in the sudden silence, I heard Hope's weak cough from the back room. "I need to get to work," Dr. Bennett said. All business again. "These dogs need immediate care." As she turned to leave, Rose caught her arm. "Thank you," my grandmother said. "Thank you for giving them a chance." Dr. Bennett smiled sadly. "That's all any of us can do. Give each other chances." Dr. Bennett converted a storage room into a recovery area for Shadow and Hope. 2 large crates side by side, IV drips hanging from makeshift stands, a space heater humming in the corner. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm and safe, 2 things these dogs hadn't known in a long time. I refused to leave. "Lily, you need to go home," Dr. Bennett said gently. "Get some sleep. I'll call if anything changes." I shook my head, planted in the chair beside Shadow's crate. "I'm staying." Rose didn't argue. She just brought blankets and pillows from Frank's truck and settled into the chair beside me. "Then I'm staying too." Word spread through Millbrook faster than the falling snow. By 8 o'clock on Christmas Eve, the clinic waiting room had filled with people. The Christmas Eve service at First Baptist Church was canceled. Pastor Jim announced that God was already present where healing was happening. People brought food. Sal arrived with containers from his diner turkey, mashed potatoes, green beans, rolls still warm from the oven. Coffee appeared in thermoses. Someone set up a folding table, and suddenly we had a Christmas Eve feast in a veterinary clinic. Mrs. Henderson, my teacher, sat in the corner with her laptop. "I'm starting a GoFundMe," she announced. "These dogs need help, and this community needs to do something good." She typed quickly, her fingers flying over the keys. Within an hour, the page was live. "Help Save Shadow and Hope, 2 dogs fighting for life in Millbrook, WV." The donation started immediately. $10 from a woman in Ohio, $20 from a man in Florida, $50 from someone who just signed it, fellow dog lover. By midnight, the total had reached $800. Frank organized rotating shifts so Rose and I could rest, though I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Shadow and Hope trapped between those bars, blood in the snow, resignation in Hope's eyes. I woke around 2 in the morning to find Shadow awake and panicking in his crate, even sedated. His trauma ran deep. He was making a keening sound, his 3 working legs scrabbling against the crate floor. I slid off my chair onto the floor and pressed my face close to the crate bars. "Shadow," I whispered. "Shadow, it's me. You're safe. I promise you're safe." His wild eyes found mine. "I know you're scared," I continued softly. "I know people hurt you. I know you think everyone's going to hurt you. But some of us won't. Some of us just want you to be okay." Shadow went still, listening to my voice. "You can trust me," I told him. "I won't leave you. I won't give up on you. Never." Slowly, so slowly, Shadow's nose pushed through the bars of his crate. I extended my hand, palm up, letting him choose. His wet nose touched my palm. Then his tongue one tentative lick. My heart nearly burst. "That's right," I breathed. "Good boy. Such a good, brave boy." In the next crate, Hope's tail gave a weak wag. She'd been watching the whole time. Dr. Bennett, who'd been sleeping on the couch in her office, appeared in the doorway. She stood there silently, witnessing this small miracle, an abused dog choosing to trust again. "He's never done that," she said quietly. "In all the time I've been treating him, he's only showed aggression or fear, never trust. He just needed to know someone would stay," I said. Rose was awake now too, watching from her chair. In the dim light, I saw tears on her cheeks. Christmas morning arrived with pale winter sunlight and the smell of fresh coffee. The waiting room was still full. Some people had gone home, but others had arrived to replace them. It was like a vigil, a community refusing to abandon these 2 broken creatures. Mrs. Henderson's phone kept buzzing with notifications. "The GoFundMe's going viral," she said, stunned. "We're at $8,431. The story had caught fire online. A local radio station had picked it up, then a Charleston TV station. By noon, there were news crews outside the clinic wanting interviews. "Girl saves veterans abused dogs," read the headline on the news site Mrs. Henderson showed me. I didn't want to talk to reporters. I just wanted Shadow and Hope to be okay. But Mrs. Henderson convinced me to do one interview. "People need to see why this matters," she said. So I stood in front of a camera and said, "They're not just dogs. They're survivors, like all of us. And survivors don't give up on each other." The clip went viral. By evening, the GoFundMe had passed $15,000. Hope was improving. She could stand now, wobbling but determined. She tried to walk and made it 3 steps before her legs gave out. Dr. Bennett said her pneumonia was responding to antibiotics. Shadow was more complicated. Physically healing but emotionally shattered. He'd let me touch him now but lunged at anyone else who came close. Even Dr. Bennett when she tried to check his bandages. Severe trauma response. Dr. Bennett explained, "He's attached to you because you represent safety. Everyone else represents potential harm." On December 26th, the town held an emergency meeting at First Baptist Church. 400 people crammed into a space meant for 200. The topic, what to do about Dale, about ownership, about the dog's future. Chief Brady stood at the front, trying to maintain order as voices rose around him. According to the law, the dogs are Dale Brennan's property. He's their legal owner. We can file animal cruelty charges, but that takes time, and it doesn't automatically transfer ownership. "The law is wrong," someone shouted. "He's a veteran suffering from PTSD, countered Marcus Johnson, a representative from Veterans Affairs who'd driven down from Charleston. 30% of combat veterans develop PTSD. Society fails them every day. We send them to war, then punish them for coming back broken. Mental illness doesn't excuse cruelty." Mrs. Henderson argued back. "Those dogs have rights too. The right to safety. The right to live without fear." Dr. Bennett stood, holding up blown-up photographs of Shadow and Hope's injuries. The crowd gasped at the images: whip marks, burn scars, infected wounds. "This didn't happen overnight," she said, her voice shaking with controlled anger. "This is systematic abuse over months, probably years. I propose Dale surrenders the dogs voluntarily and receives court-mandated mental health treatment. He keeps them under supervised care," Marcus Johnson countered. "There are programs for this. Service dogs and handlers helping each other heal." The argument grew louder, more heated. People were taking sides, veteran supporters versus animal advocates. It was getting ugly. Then Pastor Jim called my name. "Lily Harper has something to say." I hadn't planned to speak. I was 11 years old in a room full of angry adults, but I walked to the microphone anyway, and the room fell silent. My voice shook. "My mom left me. My dad left me. I know what it feels like when people give up on you." I took a breath. "But I also know what it feels like to be hurt by people who say they love you. My mom said she loved me. Then she left without saying goodbye. That hurt worse than if she'd never loved me at all." Tears ran down my face, but I kept talking. "Shadow and Hope can't speak for themselves, so I'm speaking for them. They're terrified of Mr. Brennan. They shake when they smell whiskey." Shadow's teeth were filed down so he couldn't defend himself. My voice got stronger. "Maybe Mr. Brennan deserves a second chance. Maybe he does. But do Shadow and Hope deserve to be his second chance? Do they have to go back to someone who hurt them just so he can feel better about himself?" The room erupted in applause from half the crowd. The other half sat in stony silence. The door at the back of the church opened. Dale Brennan walked in, and the room went quiet again. He looked different, still haunted, still shaking, but sober. His eyes were clear for the first time since I'd seen him. "I don't," he started, his voice barely audible. "I can't even look at myself in the mirror. How can I ask them to look at me?" He turned and left before anyone could respond. The meeting ended with no resolution. Chief Brady announced a vote would be held December 29th. Until then, Shadow and Hope would remain at the clinic under protective custody. That night, December 27th, I fell asleep on my cot in the recovery room, exhausted from 2 days of barely sleeping. I woke to Rose's voice. She was sitting on the floor between the 2 crates, talking softly. She thought I was asleep. "I know what it's like," Rose was saying to Hope, who had pressed her nose against the crate bars. "To hurt someone you love, to become the monster you swore you'd never be." Her voice broke. 25 years ago, I was addicted to painkillers. Started after a nursing injury. Pills led to OxyContin, then street drugs. I couldn't stop. Hope whined softly, as if she understood. "I had a 6-year-old daughter," Rose continued. "Carol, Lily's mother. And one day, I was so desperate for drugs that I left her at a bus station with a note pinned to her coat. Just her grandmother's address, and 'I'm sorry.' I held my breath, listening. I was gone 3 years. 3 years that baby spent wondering why her mama didn't love her enough to stay. When I got clean and came back, she'd built walls so high I never could climb them. She let me back in her life, but she never let me back in her heart." Rose sobbed. "That's why she left Lily. Trauma echoes through generations. I abandoned her, so she learned that's what mothers do. They leave." Shadow moved in his crate, watching Rose. "I see Dale in me," Rose whispered. "The shame, the self-hatred, the way you destroy things because you're already destroyed. But I also see Carol and Shadow, and Hope, the confused children asking, 'Why wasn't I enough?' And I see myself in Lily, trying to save everyone because she couldn't save herself." Hope pushed her paw through the bars. Rose took it gently in her hand. "I'm so afraid," Rose admitted. "Afraid Lily will get hurt. Afraid she'll become like me. Afraid that loving too much leads to losing too much." "Grandma," I said softly. Rose, startled, turned to see me awake, her face filled with shame. "Lily, You're not a monster," I interrupted, sitting up. "Monsters don't cry. Monsters don't spend 20 years trying to fix things. Monsters don't take in their granddaughter when nobody else wanted her." I moved to sit beside her on the floor. "I forgive you. For whatever you think you did wrong, I forgive you. Now you have to forgive yourself." Rose pulled me into a hug, both of us crying. Hope watched us, then gently placed her head on Rose's lap. Shadow, for the first time since we'd rescued him, didn't growl at my grandmother. Instead, he moved closer to the edge of his crate, watching us with something in his eyes that might have been understanding. We sat there together, 2 generations of broken Harper women and 2 broken dogs, all of us trying to figure out how to trust again, how to love again, how to believe that good things could last. "We can't let them forget the good," I said finally. "We have to show them there's more good than bad in the world." Rose nodded, stroking Hope's head. "Then that's what we'll do, however long it takes." Shadow's tail thumped once against the floor of his crate. Just once. But it was enough. The alarm pierced the quiet at 2 o'clock in the morning on December 28th. I jerked awake, disoriented, as Dr. Bennett rushed past me into the recovery room. Shadow was seizing. His body convulsed violently in the crate, foam bubbling from his mouth. His eyes rolled back, showing only whites. The sound he made, a gurgling, choking noise, would haunt me for the rest of my life. "Get the emergency kit." "Doctor," Bennett shouted to her assistant, who'd been sleeping in the office. She was already unlocking Shadow's crate, pulling him out onto the floor. Rose grabbed my shoulders, pulled me back. "Let her work, baby." I couldn't look away. Shadow's legs kicked wildly, uncontrolled. His tongue had turned blue. Dr. Bennett worked with quick, practiced movements, checking his airway, administering an injection, monitoring his pulse. The convulsions began to slow after what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 seconds. When Shadow finally went still, Dr. Bennett sat back on her heels, breathing hard. Toxic shock. The infection spread to his bloodstream despite the antibiotics. What does that mean? My voice sounded small and far away. It means he needs emergency surgery. Now. Tonight. Dr. Bennett was already moving, grabbing her phone. I need to call the surgical hospital in Charleston. My equipment here isn't adequate for what he needs. Charleston. 25 miles away. Through a blizzard that had been dumping snow for 2 straight days. Frank Morrison appeared in the doorway, awakened by the commotion. He took one look at the situation and said, "I'll drive. My truck's got 4-wheel drive and chains." Dr. Bennett was on the phone, speaking rapidly to someone. She hung up and turned to us. "Dr. Martinez at Charleston Animal Hospital is prepping surgery now, but we need to stabilize Shadow first or he won't survive the trip." For the next 20 minutes, I watched Dr. Bennett fight to save Shadow's life. IV lines, more injections, intubation, a tube down his throat to help him breathe. Shadow lay motionless through it all, barely alive. In the next crate, Hope had become agitated. She was on her feet, whining, pressing against the bars, trying to get to Shadow. She knew something was terribly wrong. "We need to move him," Dr. Bennett said finally. "He's as stable as I can get him here, but we're running out of time." Frank was already pulling on his coat. Rose moved to follow. "Wait," Dr. Bennett said. "Hope can't be left alone. She's too distressed. She might hurt herself trying to get out of that crate." We all looked at Hope, who was now pawing frantically at the crate door, her whining growing desperate. "Pastor Jim," Rose started. "She won't let anyone near her except you and Lily." Dr. Bennett interrupted. "I've tried. My assistant tried. She growls at everyone else." The reality hit me like cold water. Someone had to stay with Hope. Someone had to go with Shadow. And Hope only trusted Rose and me. "I'll stay," Rose said immediately. "Lily should go with Shadow." "No." The word came out strangled. "I can't leave Hope alone. She's terrified." "Shadow needs you," Rose argued. "Hope needs me too." Tears were streaming down my face. I can't choose between them. But I had to. There was no other option. I looked at Shadow, unconscious and dying. Then at Hope, awake and terrified of losing her only family. Both of them needed me. Both of them had already lost so much. My heart was breaking, splitting right down the middle. "I'll stay with Hope," I whispered finally. "Grandma, you go with Shadow. Lily, please." I was sobbing now. "I can't watch him die. If he's going to die, I can't be there. I can't." It was the coward's choice, and I knew it, but I couldn't make myself do anything else. Rose pulled me into a fierce hug. "He's not going to die. I won't let him." They loaded Shadow wrapped in heated blankets, still intubated, still barely breathing, into the back of Frank's truck. Dr. Bennett climbed in beside him, monitoring equipment beeping steadily. I stood at the door with Hope in my arms, watching the taillights disappear into the swirling snow. The clock read 2:45 a.m. Hope howled, a long, mournful sound that spoke of every loss, every abandonment, every moment of pain she'd ever endured. "I know," I whispered into her fur. "I know you miss him, but he'll come back. He has to come back." I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince, Hope or myself. The next few hours passed in a blur of fear and waiting. I sat on the floor of the recovery room with Hope in my lap, both of us staring at the empty crate where Shadow had been. My phone buzzed with updates from Dr. Bennett, 3:30 a.m. Roads terrible. Only going 15 mar. 4:15 a.m. Had to stop. Shadow seizing again. My heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. 4:47 a.m. Stabilized. Moving again. I could breathe again. Barely. 5:30 a.m. Arrived at hospital. Taking Shadow to surgery now. Doctor, Martinez is excellent. 6:00 a.m. In surgery. It's bad. Lily, really bad. I read that last message over and over. Really bad. Really bad. Really bad. Hope wouldn't eat. She lay in my lap, her eyes fixed on the door, waiting for Shadow to come back. People started arriving at the clinic despite the early hour and continuing snowstorm. Word had spread, Shadow was dying. The community vigil that had paused overnight resumed with renewed urgency. By 6 o'clock, 30 people filled the waiting room, silent, praying, waiting. Sal brought coffee and breakfast sandwiches that nobody ate. Pastor Jim led a prayer circle that never broke as one person left. Another took their place, maintaining an unbroken chain of hope. Mrs. Henderson sat in the corner, her phone lighting up constantly with notifications. "The GoFundMe is exploding," she said quietly. $23,000 now, people from all 50 states, some from other countries. I didn't care about the money, I just wanted Shadow to live. At 6:30 a.m., the clinic door opened. Dale Brennan walked in. He looked different from the last time I'd seen him. Still haunted, still thin, but sober, stone cold sober. His hands trembled, but his eyes were clear. He wore the same army jacket, but it was buttoned properly now, and underneath I could see a clean shirt. People stood as he entered, the room tensing. Rose wasn't there to protect me. I was alone with Hope, facing the man who'd hurt these dogs for years. But Dale didn't look threatening. He looked broken. He walked directly to where I sat on the floor, each step seeming to cost him enormous effort. People moved aside, creating a path. Dale stopped a few feet away and knelt down slowly, his knees cracking. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and held it out with shaking hands. I didn't take it. Hope pressed against me, not growling but wary. "Please," Dale said. His voice was hoarse, like he'd been crying. "Please, take it." Pastor Jim stepped forward, took the envelope, and opened it. His eyes widened. $3,000. Jim said quietly. "Cash?" Dale nodded. 3 months of my VA disability. Got them to advance it. And there's papers in there too. Legal surrender of ownership. Both dogs. They're yours now. Legally. I stared at him, unable to process this. "There's a letter too," Dale continued. His words came slowly, carefully, like each one hurt. "I wrote it at the VA hospital. Checked myself in yesterday. Huntington. Detox unit." Pastor Jim pulled out the letter and began to read it aloud. "Dear Lily, I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't even deserve to ask. But Shadow and Hope deserve a real chance. With you, I'm checking into VA hospital in Huntington today. For real this time. Tell them I'm sorry. Tell them I tried to love them. I just forgot how." Jim's voice broke on the last words. Hope did something then that stopped my heart. She climbed out of my lap and walked over to Dale. She sniffed his hand, the hand that had hurt her, and then licked it once. Dale's face crumpled. He let out a sob that shook his whole body. "I'm sorry," he gasped. "Oh God, girl. I'm so sorry." Hope licked his hand again, then returned to me. Dale looked at me through tears. "She forgave me. She's better than I am, better than any human." I found my voice finally. "She's better than most humans." Dale nodded, understanding the distinction. He stood slowly. "You take care of them. You be the person I couldn't be." I could only nod. Dale turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Tell Shadow." He stopped, couldn't finish. Then, "Tell him I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough." He left. The door closed behind him, and he was gone. I held the envelope, staring at the money and papers that made Shadow and Hope legally mine. If they lived, if Shadow lived. My phone buzzed. Dr. Bennett. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. I couldn't answer. Pastor Jim took the phone gently and put it on speaker. "Lily." Dr. Bennett's voice sounded exhausted and emotional. "He's out of surgery." The room held its breath. But it didn't go well. My world ended. "Doctor," Bennett continued, her words coming fast like she needed to get them out. The infection was more extensive than the imaging showed. It had spread through his front left leg and into his shoulder. "Doctor," Martinez removed all the necrotic tissue. "But, Lily, we had to amputate his leg. The whole leg. It was the only way to save his life." Amputate. Shadow had lost his leg. "He survived the surgery," Dr. Bennett went on, "but he's in critical condition. The next 12 hours will tell us if he pulls through. Even if he does, there's possible permanent trauma, and recovery will be long and difficult." I couldn't speak, couldn't think. "Lily," Dr. Bennett's voice was gentle. "Are you there?" Pastor Jim spoke for me. "We're here. Sarah, we're praying." "So am I," Dr. Bennett said quietly. "So am I." The call ended. I sat there on the floor with Hope, holding Dale's envelope full of money that would pay for surgery that might not save Shadow's life, money that came from a broken man trying to fix something he'd destroyed. Hope whined softly, sensing my despair. "He might not make it," I told her. "Shadow might not come home." Hope put her paw on my knee and looked at me with eyes that had seen so much pain but somehow still held hope. I broke, completely shattered. I screamed a wordless sound of anguish that came from somewhere deep inside, from the place where all my losses lived. Mom leaving, Dad leaving, now Shadow dying. People rushed over, but I couldn't stop screaming. Couldn't stop the flood of grief and rage and helplessness that poured out of me. Then Rose was there, pulling me into her arms even though she'd just driven 50 miles round trip in a blizzard. She held me tight while I fell apart. "He's fighting, baby," Rose whispered. "That dog is a fighter. He didn't survive years of abuse just to die now." But I'd seen his eyes between those bars. I'd seen the resignation. Maybe he was tired of fighting. Maybe he'd decided it was easier to let go. "I should have gone with him," I sobbed. "I chose wrong." "You chose love," Rose said firmly. "You chose to stay with Hope because she needed you. That's never wrong." Hope pressed against both of us, and in that moment broken on the floor of a veterinary clinic, waiting to hear if Shadow would live or die. I understood something fundamental about love. Love isn't about making the right choice. It's about making a choice and living with it. It's about showing up even when showing up breaks your heart. Shadow had shown up for Hope even when he was starving. Hope had shown up for her unborn puppies even when she was dying. Rose had shown up for me even after abandoning my mother. Dale had finally shown up with his surrender papers and his apology. Now I had to show up. Had to wait. Had to hope. The sun rose on December 28th, painting the snow-covered parking lot in shades of gold and pink. It was beautiful. The world kept being beautiful, even when everything was falling apart. Mrs. Henderson's phone buzzed again. $47,000, she announced quietly. The GoFundMe hit $47,000. Enough money to save Shadow. If he could be saved, all we could do was wait. The call came at 11:17 a.m. I'd been staring at my phone for hours, willing it to ring, terrified of what I'd hear when it did. When Dr. Bennett's number finally appeared on the screen, my hands shook so violently I couldn't answer. Rose took the phone from me and put it on speaker. The entire waiting room, still packed with people despite the hours that had passed, went silent. "This is Dr. Martinez," an unfamiliar male voice said. "Shadow went into cardiac arrest at 11:03. My wail cut through the room. People gasped. Someone started crying. We performed CPR for 11 minutes. Dr. Wait. Martinez continued, his voice professionally steady but carrying an edge of emotion. We got him back. Hope surged through me, so powerful it hurt. But, Dr. Martinez said, and that single word destroyed everything. Shadow's heart stopped for 4 minutes before we could restart it. His brain was without oxygen during that time. There's likely brain damage. He's currently in a coma, on a ventilator. His prognosis is... He paused. I'm very sorry, but we may need to discuss humane options. Humane options. A clinical phrase for death. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. The phone slipped from Rose's hand and clattered on the floor. I ran. Out of the clinic. Into the parking lot. Into the snow without my coat. The cold hit me like a slap, but I welcomed it. I wanted to feel something other than this crushing grief. Why? I screamed at the sky, at God, at whoever was listening. Why do you keep taking everything? Snow fell on my face, mixing with tears. Mom left. Dad left. Now Shadow. What did I do wrong? What did I do? My legs gave out and I collapsed in the snow, sobbing so hard I thought I might break apart completely. Rose found me there. My 68-year-old grandmother with arthritis and a bad heart somehow lifted me and carried me inside, her strength surprising everyone who witnessed it. Back in the recovery room, Hope had stopped eating entirely. She lay in the corner, wouldn't move, wouldn't respond when I called her name. She knew. Somehow. She knew Shadow was dying. I lay down beside her on the cold floor, girl and dog, both abandoned by everyone we'd loved, now losing each other. The hours dragged by in agony. People spoke in hushed voices. Someone brought food I couldn't eat. The GoFundMe kept climbing 50,000, 60,000, but money couldn't buy miracles. At 6 o'clock that evening, Rose stood suddenly. I need to run some errands. You stay with Hope, okay? I was too numb to question it. Rose drove to the bank first, withdrawing the last $400 from her savings account. Then to Murphy's Pharmacy, where Tom had worked for 35 years. Rose, Tom said when he saw her face, you're 3 days from running out of your heart medication. You can't skip the refill. Rose placed the withdrawal slip on the counter. I need this money for something else. Tom's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. Rose, without that medication, your heart you could die. I know. That's suicide. That's sacrifice. Rose corrected quietly. Tom came around the counter, took her hands in his. Rose, I can't let you do this. Tom, I abandoned my daughter when she was 6 years old, Rose said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. I left her at a bus station because drugs mattered more than she did. She never fully healed from that. Never trusted me again. Not really. She pulled her hands free. Now she's raising my granddaughter, and that child is breaking exactly the way her mother did. The cycle is repeating. But if I can stop it, if I can show Lily that she's worth dying for, then maybe it heals something. Maybe Carol will see it somehow. Maybe she'll come home. Tom's eyes filled with tears. Rose. I'm not asking permission, Rose said. I'm saying goodbye. She left before he could argue further. Her next stop was the lawyer's office, where she updated her will, leaving everything to Lily. Then back to the trailer, where she recorded a video message on her phone, words for Lily to hear after she was gone. Explanations and apologies and love she'd never said aloud. Finally, she drove to First Baptist Church. Pastor Jim was in his office, working on Sunday's sermon that might never be preached if Shadow died. I need to confess something, Rose said from the doorway. Jim looked up, saw her face, and set down his pen. Come in. Rose sat in the worn chair across from his desk. I'm choosing death. Is that a sin? Jim was quiet for a long moment. Tell me what you mean. Rose explained about the heart medication, about the choice between her life and Shadow's chance. My life isn't worth much anymore, but maybe my death can purchase something precious. Lily's hope, Shadow's chance, maybe even Carol's return. Rose, Jim said gently, God doesn't want your death. He wants your life. My life has mostly been wasted, Rose countered. 25 years ago. I was so deep in addiction I left my child at a bus station. Yes, I got clean. Yes. I've tried to make amends. But some damage can't be undone. Carol never forgave me. Not really. And now Lily's living with the consequences of my choices. She leaned forward. That's what Christ thought too, right? That his death could purchase something precious. Look where it got him. Resurrection, Jim said. Exactly, resurrection. Rose smiled sadly. Maybe my death resurrects my daughter's capacity to love, Lily's ability to hope, Shadow's will to live. Jim realized he couldn't stop her. He came around the desk and placed his hands on her head. Then I'll bless you, and I'll pray that God shows you another way. But I'll bless you. Rose returned to the clinic at 9 p.m. Lily hadn't moved from Hope's side. Both of them lay on the floor, barely breathing, waiting for news that didn't come. Rose lay down with them, completing a circle. 3 generations of broken Harper women and 1 broken dog, all holding each other in the dark. We can't let them forget the good, Lily whispered. We have to show them there's more good than bad in the world. Rose nodded, stroking Hope's head with fingers that would stop moving forever if her heart gave out. Then that's what we'll do, however long it takes. At 10 p.m., Pastor Jim called an emergency town meeting. Despite the late hour and continuing snow, 200 people crammed into the clinic's waiting room, hallways, and parking lot. We need to make a decision, Jim said, his voice heavy. Shadow is on life support. He's costing $1,000 per day in intensive care. Even if he wakes up, his quality of life, he couldn't finish. Doctor? Sarah Bennett stood, her eyes red from crying. I've been a veterinarian for 12 years. I've seen a lot of suffering. And I'm telling you, Shadow is suffering. He's on machines. His brain may be damaged. Even if he wakes up, he's lost a leg, been through horrific trauma. Sometimes love means letting go. She wiped her eyes. We can't save everyone. We tried. We really tried. But maybe it's time to admit we lost this fight. Several people nodded. The room felt heavy with grief and resignation. Frank Morrison stood up, his weathered face hard. No, we don't give up. Frank? Sarah started. That dog survived years of abuse. Frank interrupted. Years. He kept Hope alive when they were both starving. He protected her even when he was dying himself. He's a fighter. We don't quit on fighters. He's on a ventilator. So what you think he wants to die? You think he fought this long just to quit now? Frank's voice rose. We don't give up on soldiers. Why give up on him? This isn't about giving up, Sarah argued back. It's about mercy. It's about recognizing when we're prolonging death instead of saving life. Prolonging death. Frank's face reddened. He ain't dead yet. And as long as his heart's beating, we fight with what? Sarah's professional composure cracked. Prayers and hope. Those don't fix brain damage. They don't heal trauma. We're using that child, she pointed at me, to avoid making the hard choice ourselves. You're using mercy to avoid fighting, Frank shot back. The room erupted, people shouting over each other, accusations flying. Someone pushed someone else. It was about to turn physical. Stop. Everyone froze. I was standing in the middle of the room, though I didn't remember standing. Hope was pressed against my legs. The first time she'd moved in hours. You want to know what I choose? My voice was small but clear in the sudden silence. I choose Shadow. However long he lives. Even if it's only one more day. Lily, Sarah began gently. No, I interrupted. Everyone gives up. Everyone says it's too hard, or it's too expensive, or it's time to let go. My mom gave up on me. My dad gave up on me. Dale gave up on Shadow and Hope for years before he finally got help. My voice broke, but I kept going. But I won't give up on Shadow, even if it means I couldn't finish. The words lodged in my throat. Rose stood and put her arm around me. Even if it means she loses him anyway, Rose said for me. She'll lose him knowing she fought, knowing she didn't abandon him when it got hard. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Frank pulled out his wallet and placed a $100 bill on the reception desk. For Shadow, one by one, people stood. $20 here, $50 there, tens and fives and ones. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly widow, approached slowly. She took off her wedding ring, a simple gold band worn thin by 60 years of wear, and placed it on the pile. My Harold would have wanted this, she said quietly. He always said dogs were better than most people. More money appeared. Checks, IOUs, pledges. Even some of those who'd argued for euthanasia contributed. When Pastor Jim counted it all, the total was $3,247. This buys Shadow time, Jim said. It buys him a chance. The rest is up to him. I returned to Hope, and we lay down together again. I chose him. I whispered into her fur. Now you have to choose to stay too. For both of us. Hope's tail moved. Just slightly. Just enough. That's it, I breathed. That's my girl. Stay with me. Outside, the snow had stopped. Stars appeared between breaking clouds. The temperature was dropping. It would be the coldest night of the year. Inside, we waited, prayed, hoped. At midnight, Rose excused herself to the bathroom. She stood there looking at her pill bottle. 15 pills left. 15 days of life if she took them as prescribed, or 15 days for Shadow if she didn't. She poured 14 pills into her hand, left one for the morning, and tucked the bottle deep in her purse. When she returned to the recovery room, Lily was asleep with Hope. Rose sat in the chair beside them, her hand over her heart, feeling it beat irregularly. Forgive me, she whispered to no one in particular. To God, maybe. To Carol. To herself. The clock ticked past midnight into December 29th, the darkest hour before dawn, and somewhere in Charleston. Shadow's heart beat on, machine-assisted and uncertain, but beating still. The call came at 6 o'clock in the morning on December 29th. Dr. Bennett's phone rang, jolting her awake from where she'd fallen asleep in her office chair. Dr. Bennett. It was Dr. B. Martinez from Charleston. You need to get up here. Now. Sarah's heart plummeted. He died. No. A pause. He woke up. Sarah nearly dropped the phone. What? Shadow regained consciousness at 5:47 this morning. We've taken him off the ventilator. He's breathing on his own. Vital signs are stable. There's no apparent brain damage. It's... Dr. Martinez's professional voice cracked slightly. It's remarkable. Sarah ran to the recovery room where I was curled around Hope on the floor, both of us finally asleep after the longest night of our lives. Lily. She shook my shoulder gently. Lily, wake up. I jerked awake, terror flooding through me. The last phone call had been about Shadow's cardiac arrest. What now? He's awake, Sarah said, smiling through tears. Shadow's awake. He's going to make it. I didn't react at first. The words didn't make sense. Shadow was dying. Shadow was in a coma. Shadow was brain damaged. He's alive. My voice came out strangled. Sarah nodded, crying openly now. "He's alive, and he's looking for you." The sound that came out of me wasn't quite human joy and relief and disbelief all mixed together. People in the waiting room heard and came running. When they understood what happened, cheering erupted, hugging, crying, celebration. Hope was on her feet immediately, tail wagging, sensing the shift in energy. Frank had his truck running within minutes. Rose wrapped me in a coat. Hope wouldn't be left behind. She jumped into the truck bed before anyone could stop her. The drive to Charleston took 45 minutes. The roads had been plowed overnight, and dawn was breaking over the mountains, painting everything gold and pink. The world looked reborn. I couldn't speak, couldn't think beyond one thought: shadows alive. Shadows alive. Shadows alive. Dr. Martinez met us at the emergency entrance. He was in his 50s, with kind eyes and graying hair. "He's weak," he warned. "He's missing his front left leg. The wounds are extensive. He looks rough." "I don't care what he looks like," I said. "I just need to see him." We followed Dr. Martinez through sterile hallways to the intensive care unit. Through a window, I saw him. Shadow lay in a large crate, bandages covering most of his body, his front left leg ending in a white-wrapped stump. But his head was up, his ears were forward, his eyes were open. And when he saw me through the glass, he tried to stand. He couldn't, too weak, too injured, learning to balance with 3 legs. But he tried. He whimpered, a sound of recognition and longing that broke my heart and healed it simultaneously. "Can I go in?" I asked. Dr. Martinez hesitated. "It's against protocol. The risk of infection. Please." He looked at my face and made a decision. 5 minutes, and you'll need to sanitize first." I scrubbed my hands until they were raw, put on a gown and gloves that were too big for me, and entered the ICU. Shadow's whole body trembled when I approached his crate. Not from fear this time, from emotion. I knelt and opened the crate door slowly. "Hey, boy. Hey, Shadow. I'm here. I came back." He crawled forward. It was too hard to stand yet, and pressed his nose against my neck. His tail wagged weakly. I carefully climbed into the crate and lay beside him, mindful of his injuries and IV lines. Shadow laid his head on my chest, and I felt his whole body relax for the first time since we'd rescued him. We were both crying. Yes, dogs cry. Shadow's eyes leaked tears that soaked into my shirt. "You came back," I whispered. "You didn't give up." A knock on the window. Frank had brought Hope inside. She was whining, pawing at the glass. Dr. Martinez made another against protocol decision and brought Hope into the ICU. She limped over, still recovering herself, and lay down on Shadow's other side. A sandwich Shadow between his 2 families, Lily and Hope, the ones who'd saved him, the ones he'd fought to return to. A photographer from the Charleston Gazette was in the hallway. She asked permission, and Dr. Martinez allowed 1 photo. That image, an 11-year-old girl and 2 rescued German shepherds pressed together in a veterinary crate, would later appear on the front page, win a journalism award, and be shared millions of times online. But in that moment, it was just us. 3 survivors who'd found each other in the darkness and refused to let go. Later that morning, back at the clinic, a nurse brought me an envelope. "This came for you this morning. Overnight delivery from the VA hospital in Huntington." The return address said Dale Brennan. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten in barely legible scrawl. "Dear Lily, I'm in detox. Day 4. It's hell. I deserve hell. They got me in group therapy here. Made me talk about the war, about my squad, about what I seen. Things I never told nobody. I told them about Shadow and Hope, about what I'd done to them. The therapist. She's tough. Don't let you hide from nothing. She asked me a question that broke me open. What would your squad think of how you treated those dogs?" My squad. We saved dogs over there, in Afghanistan. In this little village outside Kandahar, there were these strays. We fed them, protected them. We said they reminded us of home, of our own dogs waiting for us. Sergeant Mike had a German Shepherd back in Tennessee. Showed me pictures every damn day. That dog's name was Duke. Mike talked about Duke more than he talked about his wife. Then I come home, and I get 2 German Shepherds, and I beat them. I starved them. I hurt them like I couldn't hurt myself. That's when I realized I wasn't mad at the dogs. I was mad at myself for surviving when they didn't. Every time I looked at Shadow and Hope, I saw my squad looking at me, asking, "Why did you live? Why did we die?" So I tried to make myself the monster I felt like. If I was a monster, then I deserved to survive. If I was good, then good men died while a bad man lived. Made no sense. Nothing made sense. But you know what, I was wrong. Therapist explained it. Survival ain't about deserving. It's about chance, luck, random. What matters is what you do with that chance once you got it. I wasted my chance. I hurt innocent creatures because I couldn't hurt the memories, couldn't hurt the guilt, couldn't hurt myself proper. But you're using your chance right. You're saving them. You're being what I couldn't be, what my squad would have been if they'd come home. If Shadow lives, you tell him I'm sorry. You tell him he's better off. You tell him he was always better than me. And Lily, you saved more than 2 dogs. You saved me too, just by showing me what real love looks like, what real courage is. You're 11 years old and you're braver than any soldier I ever knew. Your squad is lucky to have you as their leader. Respectfully, Dale Brennan, E4, U.S., Army Ret, P.S. I signed over my VA benefits to cover Shadow's care for as long as he needs. It's the least I can do. It's what Mike would have wanted me to do for Duke. Tell Shadow. Tell him it's what my squad would have wanted. I read the letter 3 times, tears blurring the words. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in my pocket. "Grandma," I said to Rose, who was sitting quietly in the corner, looking pale and tired. "Can we visit Mr. Brennan when he's out of detox?" Rose looked surprised. "You want to see him? After what he did? He's alone." I said, "Like Shadow was. Like Hope was. Like I've been. And he's sorry. Isn't that what we're supposed to accept when people are really, truly sorry?" Rose's eyes filled with tears. Her granddaughter was teaching her about forgiveness. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, it is." That afternoon, Dr. Bennett called with news about Hope. She'd done a full examination, including routine ultrasound. "Lily, I need to tell you something. Hope is pregnant." The world stopped. "What?" "She's about 6 weeks along. I estimate 6 to 8 puppies, due in late January or early February." Pregnant. Hope was going to be a mother. Suddenly everything made sense. Hope's determination to survive despite starvation. Her refusal to give up when she was trapped. Her strength that seemed to come from nowhere. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for her babies. "The father?" I asked. "Unknown. Probably before the worst of the abuse started. Dale might not have even known." I looked at Hope, who was resting peacefully for the first time in days. Her body was healing, nourishing the lives growing inside her. "She was saving them," I whispered. "The whole time. She was saving her babies." Pastor Jim, who'd been present for the examination, spoke quietly. "Life from near death. New beginnings from tragedy. That's the pattern of miracles. Isn't it?" Rose had gone very still. I saw something shift in her expression, some internal realization. "Life always chooses life," Rose said softly, more to herself than to us. "Even when death seems easier, life keeps choosing life." That evening, As the sun set on December 29th, I sat with Hope in the recovery room. Her tail wagged slowly, peacefully. Inside her, 7 puppies grew, waiting to be born into a world that had almost killed their mother. Shadow was in Charleston, learning to walk on 3 legs, his body healing from surgery and cardiac arrest. Against all odds, he'd survived. Dale was in Huntington, facing his demons, trying to become someone his dead squad could be proud of. Rose was holding her near-empty pill bottle, making calculations I didn't understand yet. And I was learning that miracles don't look like we expect them to. They're messy and complicated. They cost everything. They break you before they heal you. But they're real. God help us. They're real. Hope licked my hand, and somewhere inside her, 7 tiny hearts beat steadily. 7 new chances at life. 7 miracles waiting to be born. 3 weeks later, on January 15th, 2020, Shadow and Hope came home. The temperature had climbed to 42 degrees, unseasonably warm for January in West Virginia. Snow was melting, revealing brown grass and muddy earth. It felt like the world was thawing. Pinewood Mobile Estates had transformed. Banners reading "Welcome Home, Shadow and Hope" hung from trailers. Frank Morrison and a team of volunteers had built an insulated doghouse with a heated floor. A new fence surrounded a dedicated play area. Inside Rose's trailer, we'd rearranged furniture to create space for the dogs, with orthopedic beds donated by people from across the country. Over 50 people waited when Frank's truck pulled up at 1 o'clock that afternoon. My entire 6th grade class was there. Teachers from school, Pastor Jim, Sal from the diner, Mrs. Henderson, Mrs. Patterson. The whole community that had kept vigil through those dark December days. Shadow emerged first, walking confidently now on 3 legs. He wore a donated harness with "Survivor" stitched across it. His coat was shiny, his eyes bright and alert. When he saw the crowd, he didn't cower, he didn't growl. He stood tall, a dog who'd survived the unsurvivable and knew his worth. Hope followed, visibly pregnant now, her belly round with puppies due in 2 weeks. She moved carefully, protecting her precious cargo, but her tail never stopped wagging. The crowd cheered. Shadow's tail wagged in response. Hope walked directly to Mrs. Patterson and gently licked the elderly woman's hand. "They remember," Mrs. Patterson said, crying. "They remember everyone who helped." Sal had brought food enough to feed an army. Tables were set up with hot dogs, potato salad, and his famous apple pie. Children who'd been afraid of big dogs cautiously approached Shadow, and he let them pet him, accepting their gentle touches with patience that showed how far he'd come. We spent the afternoon in celebration, a community that had been dying finding life again through 2 rescued dogs. Shadow explored his new space. Hope rested when tired, and I couldn't stop smiling. As the sun began setting, painting the trailer park in golden light, I sat in the new doghouse with Shadow and Hope pressed against me on either side. "You're home," I whispered. "You're really, truly home." Shadow licked my face. Hope's puppies kicked visibly in her belly, making her skin ripple. We sat there together, 3 survivors finally safe, and for the first time in 18 months, I felt whole. A car pulled up just as people were starting to leave, an unfamiliar sedan with California plates. The driver's door opened, and a woman stepped out, thin, nervous, hesitant. She had my eyes and my grandmother's chin and hair that needed washing. Rose saw her and froze. "Carol." My mother had come home. Carol approached slowly, like she was expecting someone to tell her to leave. "I saw the news story online," she said quietly. "Saw the video of Lily's speech at the town meeting, heard about her fighting for Shadow." She looked at me, and her eyes filled with tears. "I realized, I've been Shadow, running from pain by causing more pain, destroying things because I was already destroyed." Rose's hand went to her mouth. Those were almost the exact words she'd spoken to the dogs 3 weeks ago. "I came to apologize," Carol continued. "Not to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve that. but to say I'm sorry, and to ask if maybe I could try to be your mother again. My first reaction was anger, white-hot rage that made my hands shake. Where were you? I needed you. I called and you never answered. I know. Carol was crying openly now. I know. I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. Silence stretched between us. Hope walked over to my mother and sniffed her carefully. Carol knelt down slowly. I remember dogs, Carol said softly, reaching out to pet Hope. Mom said we had a beagle when I was little. Biscuit, Rose provided quietly. Biscuit. Carol smiled through tears. I loved Biscuit. I'd forgotten that. I'd tried to forget everything from back then. Hope licked Carol's hand once, then returned to my side. I watched my mother, this woman who'd abandoned me, receive forgiveness from a dog who'd been abandoned worse. Hope had every reason to hate humans, to reject affection, to stay broken. But she'd chosen differently. You can stay, I said finally. For dinner. We'll see after that. Carol's face crumpled with relief. That's more than I deserve. Hope taught me something, I said. Everyone deserves a second chance, even if they don't deserve it. That evening, 4 generations gathered at our small trailer Rose. Carol, me, and the 2 dogs representing something new. 7 puppies waited to be born. We ate Sal's leftovers, made awkward conversation, navigated the minefield of shared history. It wasn't perfect. Carol slept at Mrs. Henderson's house, not with us. She got a job at Sal's diner. She visited every weekend. We built trust slowly, like Shadow learning to walk on 3 legs, tentative, unsteady, but moving forward. On February 1st, Hope went into labor at 2 o'clock in the morning. Rose, Carol, Dr. Bennett, and I were all present. By dawn, 7 healthy puppies were born squirming, squeaking bundles of potential. I named them Faith, Grace, Mercy, Justice, Peace, Joy, and Love. Shadow watched over all of them with fierce protectiveness. He lay beside Hope, this 3-legged survivor who'd become a father to puppies that weren't biologically his, but were his in every way that mattered. Dale sent a card from the VA hospital. He was 60 days sober, attending therapy twice daily, working through his trauma. He asked if he could meet the puppies someday. From a distance, if that's okay. We told him yes, someday. As sunrise painted our trailer in shades of gold, I sat surrounded by my broken, healing family. Rose, who'd spent a lifetime trying to atone for abandonment. Carol, who was learning that coming back was harder than leaving, but necessary. Shadow and Hope, who'd survived the unsurvivable. 7 puppies who represented 7 new chances at life, all of us damaged, all of us healing, all of us home. Rose pulled me close, and I realized she looked frailer than she had weeks ago. I didn't know yet about the heart medication she'd stopped taking, about the sacrifice she'd made. I would learn that later, and it would terrify me, and we'd fight about it, and eventually I'd understand. But in that moment, watching sunrise through our trailer window, I only knew one truth. This is what miracles look like. I whispered. Not perfect, just possible. Hope's tail wagged, and 7 puppies nursed at her side. Shadow's steady breathing filled the room. Carol's hand found mine and squeezed gently. Rose hummed an old hymn I'd heard at Pastor Jim's church. Outside, Millbrook was waking up a dying town, finding reasons to live again. Inside, we were proof that broken things could be mended, that abandoned things could find home, that even in the deepest winter, spring was always coming. The miracles weren't the big, dramatic moments. They were this choosing to stay when leaving was easier, choosing to love when fear was safer, choosing to hope when despair made more sense. Shadow and Hope had taught us that. 2 dogs, stuck between iron bars on the coldest day of winter, had taught an entire community what it meant to fight for each other. And we would keep fighting, for as long as it took, for as long as love required. Because that's what miracles do. They don't fix everything. They just make everything worth fixing. The end. Shadow and Hope's story reminds us that family isn't always the one you're born into. Sometimes it's the one you fight for. Lily lost her parents to divorce and abandonment, yet found family in her grandmother, 2 broken dogs, and an entire community that rallied around an impossible cause. The greatest lesson isn't about rescue. It's about what happens after. Rose learned that past mistakes don't define you, present choices do. Dale discovered that acknowledgement and accountability matter more than excuses. Carol realized that coming back is harder than leaving, but infinitely more courageous. And Lily understood that loving someone means staying, even when staying breaks your heart. This small West Virginia town proved that when we choose compassion over convenience, miracles happen. Not the dramatic kind, but the quiet, persistent kind that change lives one choice at a time. They showed us that second chances are sacred for dogs, for veterans struggling with PTSD, for grandmothers haunted by addiction, for mothers trying to return. Now I ask you, have you ever witnessed an animal suffering like Shadow and Hope, trapped, abandoned, or abused, and felt torn between intervening and walking away? What did you do? And do you have any regrets about that choice? Share your story in the comments below.